good?
Yeah, come on now.
You gonna sit down?
All right.
Let's do it. Welcome back. I'm Sultan.
And I'm Ketsia.
And we're
The Hovers.
Yes, we are. Today, actually, we got a good request from one of our viewers to have a specific topic to discuss for today. And really what that involves is talking about stress, how we cope with stress as a couple, and basically how do we detach from the stress of the working week.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into a little bit about our process there, and hopefully some of that will be helpful to you all. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even some thoughts about maybe some future video topics, feel free to comment below in the comment section, and we'll work to incorporate some of that feedback and some of those requests. But yeah, I guess we can jump into it.
Yeah, how should we start? Do you want to talk about how you cope with stress, or should I?
Yeah, maybe we could do it like, I could maybe talk about my piece. You could say how you do with it yourself, and then we can talk about it as a couple.
Sure.
How about that?
Sure.
I think for myself, maybe I should give a little bit of background. So, I'm a psychologist in training. I'm finishing up my PhD in counseling psychology. And so this topic is kind of near and dear to my personal life, but also my professional life. In short, I think some of the ways that I cope with stress, specifically in the healthy ways that I cope with stress, because of course there were some non-healthy ways of coping with stress. That could be something we talk about in the future. So some of the ways that I cope with stress in a healthy way really involve, well, a few of them. I have a few of those. Some of those involve going to the gym. That's something that's very healthy for me, especially if I go in the morning, and have that as a great start to the day. Prayer and reading God's Word also in the morning is super, super helpful. Days when I start the day off in prayer, reading God's Word, and then the gym, I feel like I can deal with the stress of the day a lot better. It's like I'm walking with God throughout the day. I'm thinking about His Word and how that plays a role in my life. But also the endorphins that you get from lifting weights. You know, for me, I like throwing around heavy weights, and so it does something for my self-esteem as well. Some of those things help me a lot. Oftentimes, too, depending on what the stressor is, I like to think about my thoughts about that stress, and think about ways of making my thoughts more sound. So sometimes we have a stressful thing happen to us in our life, like let's say, a colleague criticizes our work and that makes us stressed. Sometimes we'll have certain thoughts about that experience that actually are less sound than we think they are. Those thoughts are. And that can actually make us feel a little bit more stressed. So for example, I might say something like, that colleague thinks I'm the worst psychologist ever, because they gave me this feedback on my case presentation about a client or something like that. And I might think, well, do they think I'm the worst psychologist ever? Maybe they just gave me some feedback. Maybe it's that they gave me feedback and I just feel, kind of self-conscious or something like that. And so challenging some of my thoughts and reframing them to something more sound can oftentimes make emotional distress less severe. And also some other things I like to do. I like to watch anime and kind of zone out. That's something that's really fun. Talking with Ketsia is just such a great thing. You really anchor me up so much. And so anytime something happens, I tell my wife, and she can just be such a support. So those are a few ways that I cope with stress personally. Prayer and reading scripture, talking to you, going to the gym, talking to other friends. Those things are really helpful. Reframing thoughts.
So for me, I think like the best way for me to think about how I deal with stress is like what happens when I, come home, or I guess, the stress or the thoughts that I get before the start of the new week. I think like coming home, like what I like to do is most times, or at least a lot of the time, is just to decompress, and so that involves me maybe being quiet and watching something on social media, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, something to kind of keep my mind off things. If I'm watching TV or something, I like to watch something very mindless, something that has nothing to do with, our world or what's happening and the stress of that, and just, things that are kind of fun. It might be a little dramatic, but I think that relieves the stress of, what I do, on a daily basis, or things that are going on in our lives personally. Sure. I think that helps. Another thing I think that kind of helps in a way is planning. I like to plan, and so I like to think ahead and put things on the calendar, or let's do this and let's try this new thing, sometimes. I think can be really, I guess, exciting to look forward to, whether it's an activity here in our city, or traveling to a new place, a new city, or out the country for vacation. I think that's something that's very helpful for me. Showering. I think that's one of my favorite things.
It's a ritual
to help me de-stress and coping with things. It just helps me feel calm, and being in that, I guess, space of the bathroom, being quiet and just hearing my own thoughts, or whether I'll listen to a podcast. It just feels nice. It just feels very calming, and I think that really helps me. Like, okay, I'm ready to do the next thing. I feel clean, I feel calm, like I'm ready to do the next thing.
Question for you about that, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that it's kind of like a mindfulness exercise too? When you're in the shower, kind of anchors you in that present moment rather than the past where that stressor is located?
Probably. Like, just like watching TV and watching something mindless, like my thoughts are not on what causes me stress or what drains me. It's on, at this present time and what's in front of me. And I think that really helps a lot. It's something that I should do more of. That's hard for me. So it's something that I should practice more of, is being present. And I think that will help me a lot with, coping with the stress that I do have. So I think those things mainly are things that kind of help me to cope. So very different from each other in many ways that how we cope with stress.
We also forgot to mention that we both do journaling as well.
Yes.
That can be something that's really healthy for us too. We also practice some types of relaxation strategies as well, like deep breathing and just kind of mindfulness, staying in the present moment, things like that we try to do.
And then for us,
as a
couple, I think I think we're continuing to learn how that looks for each of us.
Yeah, because we're different.
Yeah.
Have some different qualities.
And then different things causes us anxiety and stress. And so I think particularly in this season, I think one of the best ways that trying to figure that out as a couple is communicating. Communicating what we need at this present moment that I'm feeling. A lot of times I feel drained, when I come home, and so me being an introvert, talking all day at work and coming home, a lot of times I don't want to talk. I don't want to engage in conversation, about my day or
about the stressor,
at least within the 30 minutes to an hour afterwards. I'm like, I just need some time to not talk.
And me as an extrovert, I noticed some of her distress, and I'm like, babe, what's going on? And there would be some times, there was a period in our marriage where we had to talk about that and about really what you need in those moments, or for me to acknowledge what's happening, but also ask you what you need in that moment and give you space, and maybe sitting in the silence and then maybe an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours later maybe, or whenever it seems appropriate, after asking, to then inquire about what's going on after you've processed it.
Right. I do need a lot of time to process my emotions, whether it's sadness or anxiety or anger. I need some space for that. And then when I'm, drained mentally, emotionally, physically, I need some time to just just be quiet, for myself. And so we learned that sometimes that's what I need coming home. And so we've discussed that for sure, and how to deal with that. And what about, when we're feeling anxious or upset?
That's a big emotion for us. Anxiety and maybe anger. Those can be some emotions that come up oftentimes, not necessarily in our relationship, but because of the outside world.
Yeah, and how do you cope, or how does it work for me when I'm feeling anxious or stressed?
What do I do?
Well, yeah, how do you support
you?
What are your actions during that time?
Sure. Well, there's a number of things that I'll do. One, I'll notice it, and I'll ask you how you're feeling, how you were feeling, and I'll state what my impression is about her emotional state. So I might say, you seem, or you appear anxious. What's going on? Do you want to talk about it? And she might say, maybe later. Or, I don't want to get into it now. It might make me feel more anxious. But there might be times she might just say, yeah, let's talk about it. We might talk about it. But in those times where you might say, I don't really want to talk about it, I'll then ask, well, what's a way that I can support you at this present moment? What do you need from me? What can I do to make you feel better? Sometimes that's physical touch. Sometimes that's giving you some space and alone time. Sometimes that's me running to do an errand, Maybe I know you like a certain drink or snack and I can get that for you, or some type of acts of service that can kind of relieve some stress that you do have that might make the anxiety a little bit more bearable.
Right. And then I guess
how do you
for
support me when
I guess I'm still learning how to do that in many ways. You're really good at communicating how I can support you. I think sometimes it can be rough for us sitting in that moment, because I can be confused and not sure what to do, and then my emotions get into it. And so we're just sitting in this lull or this middle. But with communication, to support you, I learned to ask you again about how you're feeling, what's going on.
You do.
I know that you like physical touch, so whether that's holding a hand, or cuddling, or a hug,
being exploratory with your hands.
I know that helps. We can cut that out.
No.
Yes. And then just being there. Sometimes I'm just like, well, it looks like he's upset, he's stressed, anxious, or I'll just be there to listen.
Sure.
And a lot of that, I learned that it's okay for me to listen and not to talk and say my 2 cents or my piece of advice or whatever. And sometimes just listening is just all that he needs, and sometimes maybe some encouragement, and I think as a couple you kind of learn as you go along, but also certain moments you need certain things, and you don't know unless you ask,
and you got to strive to communicate that, and that's something that we strive to communicate. We've actually started to do weekly check-ins that are about 3 weeks ago, where we just spend about 2 hours, hour and a half or so, just talking about the ups and highs or ups and lows of our week. Hey, so we're back. We obviously have different clothes on. We just had a little bit of some technical difficulties with the camera. But we're back to finish some of our points about our weekly check-ins. So in the last couple of weeks we've been doing these weekly check-ins, and we've been talking about really how our week has been that past week and what we expect to see in the upcoming week. So we talk about things like, what was your high or low of the week, or what were some things that made this week particularly exciting, or joyful or difficult or challenging. And we ask the same questions in the context of our relationship. So, how did I hurt you this week? Or how did I love you well this week? Or what can I do this week to make you feel supported and cherished and things like that? And that's been a great way of intentionally setting aside time in addition to like a weekly date night to connect and to really explore our unique dynamic and how we're doing. And so that's been really really helpful to just feel, I don't know, just more in tune.
Yeah. It's been, I guess, it's been a real good thing for our relationship. Although we're really good at communicating and talking about our issues and our problems during the week, it's good to kind of sit down and be like, okay, let's talk about some things that, you know, went well or something that didn't go well. And then let's also talk about things that we need of each other this week. You know, how can you love me better this specific week itself? And so we're trying to do that, and it's been very helpful.
Very helpful. It can also be a time of confession as well for each other. Like, I've sinned against you in this way, and I need some space to confess that. Or, I need an apology for this. This would make me feel better. You know, things like that. And it's a great way to just feel like, to further affirm like our commitment to one another. It's kind of like, you know how like many, you know that saying where it's like sex is like this reaffirmation of like your covenant and your affection for one another. You know, sometimes people say that. Yeah, so like I feel like I think that's completely true, and I think like an intentional meeting time like this is another way of affirming your commitment to one another, and your commitment and covenant before God as well.
And I feel like it's also great to like reset your week, you know, as a couple, like, you know, starting fresh as always.
Exactly. I really feel fresh, like a newborn child, every time when we have that meeting. And it's like, I actually get excited for, it's another way for a Sunday to be exciting. Sometimes Sunday can be kind of like a sad day because it's like, oh, Monday's just around the corner. But Sunday, shoot, what am I thinking? Sunday at 5 o'clock, 5:30, I'm like, me and my wife are gonna have our time. And it's just so nice. So, you know, if that's something that you haven't incorporated, I think that would be a great idea to incorporate in your relationships. It will be very, very helpful. Very helpful to just tending to those dynamics between you and your spouse, and making sure that you can love each other accurately. So, anything you have?
I think that's it for this week. Thank you guys for joining us this week. We're super excited to continue to do these videos.
Absolutely. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or any topics or subjects you'd like us to cover, feel free to comment in that comments description, or comments box rather. And we'll get back to you as soon as we can and try to incorporate some of the topics you'd want to hear more about. So thanks so much, friends, and see you all next time.
Bye.
Peace.